Welcome back to Big Mouth. Now, sometimes something drops that you have to do a video immediately about. This should upload around just before or just after my latest edition of the DCEU Daily. Normally, I would wait to do another video for my next edition of the DCEU Daily, but I'm going to read you an article and interview with Snyder from Vanity Fair, and this is a big one, and they've dropped a couple of pictures as well. Look at that. That is amazing, right? That's Batman. But this one is really controversial, and already I've seen some positive and negative reactions to it. And only Snyder can get these reactions. And these are a couple of stunning pictures. And this, of course, is of Jared Leto's Joker. Now, we're going to read out the article together from quotes from people like Snyder, of course, Deborah Snyder, his wife, and people like John Berg and Diane Nelson. This is a massive kind of palette filler. So it's going to be interesting what this article is going to do in terms of the DC Snyderverse fandom's mentality, considering the opinions of John Berg and Jeff Johns and people like this. So sit back. We're about to read this Vanity Fair article for the first time together. Be fair warned, my throat's playing up, so if it sounds croaky now and again, please excuse me, and I might have to clear it now and again. Now, we know, all of us who have followed this story, the Snyder story of the DCEU, know it's a complex story, and it's about more than just a film. It's about being a visionary. It's about mentality. It's about being unique, and it's about being different. But this is also about Snyder's very personal tragedy as well. So whether you're watching this video or you love Snyder, you're well entwined with his story, remember the man did lose a daughter. And everyone has a personal story to tell, and they're not just their sum parts. So let's begin. Justice League, the shocking, exhilarating, heartbreaking true story of the Snyder Cut. The demoralizing battle with Warner Brothers, a devastating personal tragedy, a fan base he couldn't control. Zack Snyder tells VF why he quit Justice League and why he's returned to complete the cut that's reached near mythical status by Anthony Breznican. So this is a big one. This is a big one. This is not your screen rant. This is a proper, Vanity Fair has been around for years. And Snyder keeps on going to them with exclusives. That's very interesting. So let's go. Zack Snyder, the director of Justice League, has never seen Justice League. His name is in the credits as the filmmaker, but he's never sat through the version released to the world 3 years ago. His wife, Deborah, who produced the movie, advised him not to. Good idea. Well, Deb's just a very wise woman, isn't she? In late 2017, months after the couple cut ties with the superhero epic amid an increasingly demoralizing battle with Warner Brothers, Deborah Snyder sat in a screening room on the studio lot alongside Christopher Nolan, one of the movie's executive producers, as well as the director of the Dark Knight trilogy. She braced herself as the light went down. It's a weird experience, she says now. I don't know how many people have that experience. You've worked on something for a long time, and then you leave, and then you see what happened to it. What happened to Justice League was a crisis of infinite doubt. A team of executives who lost faith in the architect of their faltering comic book movie empire, and a director in the midst of a family tragedy that sapped him of the will to fight. Joss Whedon, a director from another universe, the Marvel Cinematic one, left the Avengers after 2 movies and crossed over to comics rival DC, picking up Justice League not where Snyder left off, but remaking it significantly with extensive rewrites and hurried reshoots, just as the studio demanded. On November the 17th, 2017, the team-up between Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg and Aquaman and The Flash didn't so much debut in theatres as crash into them. It was sneered at by critics, shrugged at by baffled moviegoers, and all but disowned by those who created it. Whedon has since been accused of unprofessional and abusive behaviour on set. The director declined repeated requests for a comment. He left his name off the movie except to claim a shared writing credit with Chris Terrio, who had written Snyder's previous installment, 2016's Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. Publicly, everyone close to the movie practiced their smiles and rehearsed their talking points in the hopes of doing no further damage to the project. Not that it helped much. The movie earned $657 million globally, which sounds like a lot of money until you consider the nearly $300 million budget, including the reported $25 million for Whedon's reworking, plus a conservative estimate of $100 million to $150 million in marketing costs. Factor in the sizable cut theatres take from the box office, and a return of only $657 million is clearly a money loser. 6 months later, Justice League's box office was dwarfed by Marvel's own all-star showcase, Avengers Infinity War, which flexed its muscles at $2 billion. After their private screening of the Whedon cut, Nolan and Deborah Snyder emerged into the light with a shared mission. They came and they just said, "You can never see that movie." Zack Snyder says during lunch at his Pasadena office, a modernist series of cubes jutting from the hillside that overlooks the Rose Bowl. So this is clear that Chris Nolan and Deb, his wife, said you must never see this movie. Because I knew it would break his heart, his wife adds. It's emotional. This is the Snyder story, the DCEU. It's emotional to me. It's emotional to you. Just imagine, this is not just the director. This is an artist. He really believes in what he's doing. And for his wife to see that destroyed by Whedon and the studio, and knowing that it would break him for him to see that movie, it breaks my heart, let alone how Zack felt about the whole thing. Because I knew it would break his heart, his wife adds. That might seem overly dramatic. It's just show business after all. But the Snyder's heart had already been through a lot. The battle over Justice League was agonising, but it wasn't the worst thing to happen in their family that year, not even close. Professionally, at least, things have vastly improved. For years, DC fans and Snyder enthusiasts who worshipped his high-octane brawn fest, like his Dawn of the Dead remake, his ancient Greek battle saga 300, and his twisted Watchmen adaptation, beat a drum on social media demanding that Warner Bros. Return Justice League to its original filmmaker and allow him to share his version of the movie. They dubbed it the Snyder Cut. The fans could be clever, but many were horrifically toxic. All of them were relentless, and they grew more numerous over time. Last May, they finally got their wish when Warner saw the potential to leverage all the free publicity and do something unprecedented on its upstart streaming service, HBO Max. It's not uncommon for directors to lose creative control of a big-budget studio spectacles or for other filmmakers to step in, but it's unheard of for a studio to return to an exiled filmmaker and offer back the power and creative freedom it has yanked away, especially when some of the most beloved and lucrative characters in pop culture history are involved. The Snyder Cut is coming on March the 18th. For the director's devotees, it's a Hollywood ending for a Hollywood story. But for the truly devastating thing that happened to Zack Snyder and his loved ones in 2017, there can be no fix, no do-over. In the throes of the conflict with Warner Bros., the Snyder's 20-year-old daughter, home from college and in the middle of a long struggle with depression, took her own life. After 2 years spent largely focused on their other children and extended family, Zack and Deborah went back to work. A difficult but vital part of the healing process. When they spoke to Vanity Fair for this story, they were completing Army of the Dead, a zombie-filled heist extravaganza that will launch a new multi-pronged franchise for Netflix. As well as restoring Zack's original vision for Justice League, the latter will be a 4-hour event for HBO Max that will raise money for suicide prevention programs that could help spare others that grief that shook his family. It's such a lightning strike in the centre of this whole saga, Snyder says, of his daughter Autumn's death. It has informed everything we've done since. Their daughter's death was the reason the Snyders walked away from Justice League, realising their fighting spirit was needed at home with their other children, with each other, rather than in a losing battle with a powerful studio. Now she is the main reason he decided to come back. At the end of the movie, it says for Autumn, that Autumn Snyder says sitting in the shadows of a darkened editing suite framed from the movie Frozen on the screen around him. When he talks about his daughter, the otherwise scrappy, ebullient 54-year-old filmmaker always looks away. Without her, this absolutely would not have happened. Zack and his then wife Denise Weber adopted Autumn when she was 1. A little over 1, he says, smiling at the memory of her wild energy. Still an infant, but crazy, Autumn was slightly older than the couple's son, Ellie. They had 2 more children before they divorced. Snyder had 2 sons with line producer Kirsten Elling before marrying Deborah, his long-time producing partner, in 2004, with whom he adopted 2 more children. The filmmaker has often said being an adoptive father is one of the reasons he was so invested in the story of Kal-El, a powerful being who became Superman thanks to the love and care of Jonathan and Martha Kent. This is just so emotional. It really is. Excuse me. This is a powerful interview. I didn't expect scroll down Twitter today and find this, but this is massive, and you should all read it for yourselves. The connection to what he's been through, adopting children, and talking about the connection of Jonathan and Martha Kent is extremely powerful as well. More than 3 years after Autumn's death, Snyder still slips between the past and present tense when talking about her. She's the only dog, he says, of his family. She was the only fan. The rest of them he shrugs today. Eli is interested in filmmaking, but Autumn was the only one of his children who matched her dad's kid-like enthusiasm for gods, monsters, aliens, and superheroes. She's super creative, he says. She was a writer. She was at Sarah Lawrence to be a writer. Wow. Snyder swiped through his phone to show a selfie Autumn took in a Letterman jacket, worn by Ray Fisher's character in Justice League, a football star horrendously wounded in a car accident and rebuilt by his scientist father into half-robot warrior cyborg. Autumn had been in therapy and on medications, but the depression remained brutal. She was always wondering about her worth. What is my worth? What am I supposed to do? What am I about? Snyder stumbles on his words, his eyes glassy. The conversation was like, of course you're amazing. What do you mean you're worth? You're worth more than anything in the world. And she would just be like, yeah. And it's the thing with depression. You can try and convince people they're worth something, and they can seem to agree with you, but it's difficult for them. It really is. But this is just powerful stuff. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect to react like this. Wow. Snyder says Autumn used writing to vent her pain. Yeah, I know exactly how she felt. You know, this is the thing, isn't it? Creativity is important. Creativity can ease the pain for a little while. To channel it into words that might contain it or explain it. She adored sci-fi. Her main characters are always in this battle with things from another dimension that no one can see, says Snyder. But it's a serious war, and that war was happening to her every day. I think so many people are in that battle, and they smile and nod at you. The fact that a studio had lost faith in Snyder's ability to make Justice League seem mundane and pointless after Autumn's death. It's such a lightning strike in the centre of this whole saga, says Snyder, and in a lot of ways it has informed everything we've done since. The Snyders tried to keep going for 2 months after Autumn's death, finding solace in finishing Justice League, but by then the situation with Warner Brothers had imploded. The official story was that the Snyders were voluntarily leaving the movie due to their family tragedy, and that Zack had handpicked Whedon to complete the movie he had planned. Only half of that was true. In 2010, when he first began working on DC movies for Warner Brothers, Snyder was promoted as a visionary director. Though critics sometimes differed, even his hits could be divisive. He'd emerged from music videos and commercials with the breakout remake of Dawn of the Dead in 2004 and followed it up with the otherworldly, visually audacious tale of Resistance 300, which became a box office behemoth in 2007. Given his choice of projects, Snyder picked Watchmen, the iconic graphic novel that scorned the classic tropes of superhero storytelling, and explored the corrupting of nature of power. His 2009 adaptation appended comic book expectations just as Hollywood was building epic new franchises. Snyder then made a pair of box office disappointments, a digitally animated adventure about warring owls called Legend of the Guardians, which is fantastic, by the way, and the surreal and some would say sexist action movie Sucker Punch, before being called to take on a legend among legends, Superman, my character. When it debuted in 2013, Man of Steel established Henry Cavill as an object of global first, just as 300 had done for Gerard Butler. And his washboard abs, Snyder's twist was to present a conflicted Clark Kent rather than the sunny alter ego played by Christopher Reeve. Snyder's Superman was willing to kill for what he thought was right, which many longtime fans of the character found reprehensible. Right. Now, this is not really right by the author and the journalist. I don't know if Snyder proved this. He's not willing to kill for what he believes is right. He killed Zod because he had no choice, and that destroyed him when he did it. It's important to be clear and accurate about these films, and though he still saved the world, he never felt like he truly belonged in it. The studio had hoped for more than the $668 million it made at the box office, but Man of Steel fared well enough for Snyder to get another shot, this time bringing Ben Affleck into the universe as Bruce Wayne in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. The subtitle was a giveaway. This will be a prologue to Justice League, a superhero crossover event that some moviegoers have been pining for forever. Snyder wasn't just making a big budget tempos. He'd become the architect of the entire DC cinematic universe, and his casting choices continuing to resonate. He chose Gal Gadot to play Wonder Woman in Batman v Superman and produced Patty Jenkins' standalone movie about the Amazonian princess. I remember Gal saying to me, Zach, I was going to quit the business. I was getting ready to just move back to Tel Aviv and just have a life there. I was done with Hollywood. I was going to do this one more audition. Then she came in and I was like, that's my Wonder Woman. Now she's the whole world's. As with Man of Steel, Snyder continued to challenge expectations and norms, which sometimes led to pushback from the studio and originalist fans. Aquaman, for instance, he always looked waspy in the comics. In casting the role for Batman v Superman, Snyder decided to forego the blonde hair and blue eyes of the comic book hero in favour of the long dark locks and smoky gaze of Jason Momoa, who had come in to audition for Bruce Wayne. That's important. He's a Pacific Islander. There's a connection to the sea. What if he's Aquaman? He remembers thinking. Everyone was like, you're insane. That is not a thing. That's just classic Zack, isn't it? It became part of a pattern. The studio gave Snyder the power to go anywhere he chose with its most valuable characters. And he always went somewhere other than what they wanted, the director says. Still to his credit, all the recent DC films have used Snyder's universe as a foundation, even Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey, which take place in his version of Gotham City. The upcoming Flash film will connect to all the disparate DC films by ricocheting through multiple universes, with Michael Keaton's Batman appearing along with Affleck's. But harsh reviews for Batman v Superman demolished Warner Brothers' confidence in Snyder. Even the director's champions like production head Greg Silverman were worried when Batman v Superman came out. We did get a negative reaction from the fans. It was disheartening for all of us, says Silverman, now the founder and head of independent content company Stampede Ventures. Zack had made these movies like 300 that were such crowd pleasers, and that was our job, to make crowd pleasers. And then we have made a movie together and it didn't really please the audience. Well, not all of the audience, but people like me were pleased. When Snyder quit, he took his unfinished Justice League on a laptop as a memento. He figured he'd show it to friends. That's the header of the next column. Marvel Studios movies, whose success exerted so much pressure on the DC team, hit on a formula that mirrored their comic book roots, telling stories about relatable everyday people grappling with sudden phenomenal powers. Snyder's DC universe approached its superheroes from the opposite direction, depicting gods and immortals who are at ease wielding cosmic strengths, but strained to be human and connect to the ordinary world. The director envisioned this as an operatic tragic and perhaps a more challenging type of comic book storytelling, but Warner Brothers feared it made his heroes gloomy, their abilities a curse. That's what Snyder was trying to do. Diane Nelson, who was president of DC Entertainment at the time, says she appreciated that Snyder was more into deconstructing the familiar than just replicating it. Zack is a masterful visual storyteller who goes deep on individual characters, she says. For some people that is amazing, and for other people that becomes the problem, because they have fixed opinions about who these DC characters are and are not. In 2016, as principal photography got underway on Justice League in the United Kingdom, rumours proclaimed that Snyder had been fired from the film. That didn't happen, but Warner Brothers' then chairman and CEO, Kevin Sugihara, did assign watchdogs in the form of DC Entertainment creative chief Jeff Johns and Warner Brothers co-production head John Berg. The edict was clear. At least one of them had to be on the set every day. Now, this is very, very similar to what happened to Dick Donner with Superman when they brought Dick Lester on to keep an eye, because Dick didn't want to talk to the Salkinds anymore, the producers who were funding the film. So, you know, Dick Lester was like an intermediary and ultimately became the director of Superman 2. Berg, who's now production president at Stampede, recalls the duty as a low point. It was really tricky and not a position that I loved, to be honest. He says, I tried to be forthright about what I thought creatively. My job was to try to mediate between a creator whose vision is instinctively dark and a studio that perceived rightly or wrong that the fans wanted something lighter. I was respectful of the director and didn't pursue things that were coming at me from the corporate side that I thought weren't in line with what would make the best movie. Sorry about that. That was my machine. So we don't know if you heard that, but we'll do that again. I was respectful of the director and didn't pursue things that were coming at me from the corporate side that I thought weren't in line with what would make the best movie. So this is John Berg. This is very, very important because John Berg has got a bad rep, you know, with us Snyder fans. So it's important that the guy's spoken here and he said he didn't feel comfortable about what was going on and he tried to ignore a lot of what the corporates were saying and in a way tried to let Zack do his movie. That's important. Snyder knew why Johns and Berg were on set. You could say babysit, he says. Many filmmakers would have bristled at the intrusion, but he was gracious. It didn't bother me too much because they weren't that threatening. I just felt the ideas they did have they were trying to inject humour and stuff like that. It wasn't anything that was too outrageous. So Snyder, at this point, doesn't seem to have a real serious issue with Berg and Johns. This is important because when you go over on Twitter and when you go on DC Twitter, it's venomous about them. This is important. We will discuss it after the article. But Warner Brothers did nix some of his more sweeping notions for Justice League, like adding a romance between Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne and Amy Adams' Lois Lane, who was mourning Superman's death in the previous film. The intention was that Bruce fell in love with Lois and then realised that the only way to save the world was to bring Superman back to life, says Snyder. So he had this insane conflict because Lois, of course, was still in love with Superman. We had this beautiful speech where Bruce said to Alfred, I never had a life outside the cave. I never imagined a world for me beyond this. But this woman makes me think that if I can get this group of gods together, then my job is done. I can quit. I can stop. And of course, that doesn't work out for him. So, you know, I watched Chris Wong's Fenton. Now, the idea was that actually the potential relationship between Lois Lane and Bruce Wayne was a Snyder idea. Now, did I read that right? Is it Snyder's idea or was it Johns and Berg's idea? Let's have a look at this. It didn't work out for Snyder either. The studio said no. So if we go back, because it's important, because I obviously read it wrong. So bring back to life. So here we go, yeah. But Warner Brothers did nix some of his more sweeping notions for Justice League, like adding a romance between Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne and Amy Adams. So it was Zack's idea. It was Zack's idea. This is what Ping Pong Flicks Chris Wong's Fenton has said in the past. So that's right. So Zack had this idea. It didn't work out for Snyder either. The studio said no. So this was his vision. I think it was a bloody good idea. and I think it would have created more drama and conflict within the story. What a shame. The downside of making epics in the studio's financial expectations for Justice League, Warner Brothers wanted a big, round $1 billion in global box office, which Snyder's movies had never reached. In January 2017, the director showed his first cut to Sugihara. It did not go well. According to Snyder and others, Sugihara, who resigned from Warner Brothers in 2019 amid a sexual misconduct scandal involving the aspiring actress Charlotte Kirk, declined an interview request. Among the issues was the length of the film. There was a mandate from Sugihara that the movie be 2 hours long, says Snyder. That order had a paradoxical impact because it meant eliminating much of the heart and humour the studio also wanted, like a comical romantic subplot between Ezra Miller's Flash and Kiersey Clement's Iris, the latter of whom was absent entirely from the Whedon film on the day Vanity Fair visited his office. Snyder was working on finalising the music for the restored scene in which the Flash rescues her from a car crash. Snyder also saw a bigger structural problem with the make it shorter order. How am I supposed to introduce 6 characters and an alien with potential for world domination in 2 hours? I mean, I can do it. It can be done. Clearly it was done, he says, referring to Whedon's version, but I didn't see it. Reports that Snyder himself asked Whedon for help were false. John's one of the studio-appointed babysitters, had been planning a Batgirl movie with Whedon, and Snyder and others says John recruited him. Let's start again. John's recruited him to do rewrites for Justice League. John's representatives didn't respond to a request for comment. Once again, Snyder was gracious and even hopeful. I thought maybe he could write some cool scenes. I thought that would be fun. Wow, it's just, the guy, Zack's just so cool. How many people would take it like that? Soon it became clear that Warner Brothers was giving... Excuse me, I've got a bloody notification. Let's start again. Soon it became clear that Warner Brothers was giving Whedon more and more power. He would not just advise during reshoots, but also do some directing himself. Snyder says he only had one conversation with Whedon about the studio's notes, reading from Autumn's death and finding anguish in their work rather than relief. Zack and Deborah quit. We just lost the will to fight. That fight, in a lot of ways, says Zack. All of us, the whole family, were just so broken by losing Autumn that having those conversations in the middle of it really became, I was like, really, frankly, I think we did the right thing, because I think it would have been either incredibly belligerent or we just rolled over. One by one, he called members of his cast and crew. I remember I was in a movie theatre, coincidentally enough. Ray Fisher said on the set of Snyder's reshoots last fall, I was walking into the AMC right in Times Square and I got the call from Zack. He was saying that he had to deal with stuff with the fam and he was having to step away. I had 1 trillion questions. My heart sank. Whedon rewrote and reshot about 3/4 of Justice League. From what Snyder can gather, when fans ask him about details of the movie, that bears his name. He usually has no idea what they were talking about. Worst of all, for Warner Brothers, Whedon didn't exactly save the movie. When we got to see what Joss actually did, it was stupefying, says studio executive who requested anonymity. The robber on the rooftop, so goofy and awful. The Russian family, so useless and pointless. Everyone knew it. It was so awkward because nobody wanted to admit what a piece of shit it was. Wow. And this is a studio executive who doesn't want to be named. I wonder who that is. Wow. Justice League opened on November the 17th, 2017 and created because Cavill had been making Mission Impossible Fallout. During the reshoots, Whedon's team had to digitally erase his moustache in Justice League, which led to a bizarre warping of his face. The jokes fell flat, and behind the scenes some of the cast had revolted. Fisher had publicly claimed Whedon was abusive on set, and that Warner Brothers executives enabled his actions. Gaddard told the Los Angeles Times that she also had a negative experience with Whedon, which she reported to the higher-ups. After concluding its investigation, Warner Brothers announced the remedial action had been taken, though the studio didn't offer specifics. Days before the announcement, HBO, a division of Warner Media, parted ways with Whedon on the sci-fi series The Nevers. Fisher continues to clash with the studio and has expressed dismay at the outcome of its investigation. Well, that's not exactly true. He agrees with the outcome, he's happy with the outcome, but he's not happy, as he's alleged, that Walter Hamada, the DC movie chief, allegedly interfered with the investigation. So the results, I think, raised firewood. The cast were very loyal to Zack, and they were hurting for him, says Nelson, the former DC president. It would have been difficult. It would have been a difficult environment for any new director to walk into. I have no doubt about that. But then how Joss chose to handle that is Joss's to live with. So that's interesting. Diane Nelson says, but how Joss chose to handle that is to Joss's to live with. So obviously he didn't handle it well. In the aftermath of Whedon's version, a new narrative arose on social media. Release the Snyder Cut hashtag. Snyder gradually began to encourage the movement, but it was hardly the first thing on his mind. From the time we left, says Snyder, it was not a great year, but we did a lot of stuff with family. It was really important, an important year. That year together became two. After grieving autumn and starting to heal with his family, he began work on Army of the Dead. A visceral, funny and exceedingly dark smash and grab story about an elite strike team that goes into a zombie overrun Las Vegas to retrieve a hidden fortune before the hot zone is new. Now, this is interesting because Snyder is known for dark stuff. This is supposed to be dark, but it's also supposed to be funny. It'll be interesting to see how well Zack writes comedy, because this will expose the haters as well. The zombie virus emerges from Area 51, so aliens may be involved too. During a day-long interview, Snyder giddily scans through concept art for an accompanying animated series of proving vehicles and otherworldly weapons and supernatural beings. He makes suggestions for changes to his team of artists, all working remotely via Zoom. Behind him on the wall-length bookshelf, there is a frame with two photos, Autumn and Eli in their bathing suits as toddlers, beaming with the same smiles as their dad as he assesses his monsters. The Army of the Dead movie is a lot to tackle, and the related prequel and animated series even more, all-consuming. Scott Stuber, head of original films at Netflix, says, it's a chance to build a world with a filmmaker who's hungry to return. Zack went through something very difficult, and I think he's probably realised, like we all do, it's okay to be vulnerable. For those of us lucky enough to know him and Deborah, he's a very soulful, kind, thoughtful human being. He's got this facade of big action movies, all these bravado things, but there's sweet kindness to him. At a time of stories of abusive creators, Snyder is an anomaly. Even executives who were sometimes at odds with him agree that he's genuinely nice. I'd be stronger than that, says Silverman. He's a wonderful guy and fostered a wonderful working environment on his sets. He really valued the crew. He valued his cast. Snyder's movies tend to be about strength and what it means to wield it. Maybe it was inevitable that he'd eventually not only join the release of the Snyder Cut bandwagon, but begin driving it. Absolutely, he drove it. It's the reason we got the movie. When Snyder left Warner Brothers, he took his laptop, which was embolized with a Justice League sticker on the hard drive, was his original nearly 4-hour version. It was devoid of visual effects, music, and all the fine-tuning that make a movie a movie. It was also in black and white to him. It was a memento. He thought we would just show it to random people who stopped by, like our friends or whatever. Rather than fade away, the demand for the Snyder Cut gained momentum over the years. Groups paid to have single-engine airplanes fly or release the Snyder Cut banner around both the Warner Brothers studios, lot in Burbank, and the annual Comic Con gathering in San Diego. Last year, fans poured resources to buy a Times Square billboard. An auction's contingent of followers, though, didn't just advocate for the movie, but also used social media to attack people who were critical of Snyder or their cause. Now, that's an interesting take, but you've got to defend yourself in life. If you want to give it, you've got to take it in life. Right. Who were critical of Snyder or their cause. Maybe they hoped to silence dissenters, or maybe they were just trolls being trolls. In any case, film journalists with negative takes reported getting swarmed with insults, with even threats. And this is where I have to cut in again. Journalists, toxic journalists, who have been scathing about Zack, personal attacks about his movies, have been as toxic as some fans' responses to them. This journalist doesn't want to add that. Unfortunately, I think a lot of online fandom and fandom culture is headed in this very toxic direction, says Kaylee Donaldson, who writes for Pagib.com. It is especially strong with Snyder Cut acolytes, he adds, perhaps because they respond misguidedly to the director's tales of loner heroes in a hostile world. I don't get this from the Birds of Prey. Now, this is so agenda-driven. This is brilliant. And I'm going to come at this. I don't get this from the Birds of Prey fans or the Shazam fans, says Donaldson. I got a little bit from Joker fans, but nowhere near the same level. Nevertheless, she looks forward to Snyder's movie. I think 300 is great fun. I think the first 10 minutes of Watchmen, some of the best things any superhero movie has ever done. Even if she doesn't end up liking the Snyder Cut, she said, I would rather watch one person's chaos than a committee's snooze fest. Now, this is interesting because she says that the Birds of Prey fans don't attack her. But do you know why? Do you know why they don't attack you? It's because you don't attack them or their director. You see, I don't know. What's her name? What's her name again? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But I need to talk about this because she's very agenda-driven. I don't get this from Shazam fans. I don't get this from Birds of Prey fans. But I do get these things a little bit from Joker fans, but not that much. Why do you get it from Joker fans? Is it because you called Joker a dangerous film and said people shouldn't go to see it because, you know, men were going to go there. Men were going to go there and cause the moviegoers and put them in danger. Isn't that what you people said? And you wonder why toxicity brings out toxicity. Now, I don't think that threatening to end someone's life is acceptable. But you've got to understand, and this is what I said about Piers Morgan on Twitter today and on TikTok. He plays the victim about the abuse he gets, but he waves the red rag, he calls people's name, he calls people names, mentally unbalanced people are responding to him. And then they love the toxicity so they can play the victim. And this, my friends, is what this journalist is doing. She's trying to paint us as toxic, but the toxicity always comes from them first. You see, they can give it, but they can't take it. Drea Lamanti, a clinical psychologist who explores superhero archetypes on the Arkham Session podcast, notes that fans get especially aggressive on social media when they feel they've been denied something. What I have observed is an enduring false sense of ownership, which can manifest as abuse, threats, and strong, intense reactions when the story doesn't go their way. She says fighting for the unseen cut of the film became a cause. In some quarters, the worst behaviour materialised. They're shouting and people are listening to them. Even if it's negative comments, they're getting positive reinforcement to continue down that path. Again, nobody was shouting because they weren't getting what they wanted. They constructively were fighting for a cut of a film because we just read the story of what happened to Zach. It's despicable. But then it was you, the journalists, who were being toxic. And people who maybe, some of the people in our fandom, maybe not mentally stable and used to dealing with people with other agendas and other ideologies, barked back too aggressively. These people don't look at it like this. They see it as an excuse to try and make us look like toxic fans. But we didn't get toxic on our own. I have the intellect and the IQ, mostly not to react like this. But at the end of the day, it takes two to tango. And these journalists love waving the red rag, but then playing the victims. The trolls may have actually held back the movement. Like looters, otherwise peaceful demonstrations, Snyder cringes at descriptions of the abusive tactics. I 100% think it's wrong, he says. I don't think anyone should be calling anyone anything. I've always tried to give people in the fandom attention who do good things. November 2019 brought a sustained hashtag push on Twitter, which Snyder promoted. Gaddick and Affleck were now calling for his cut to be released. Are they toxic as well? To a few days later, Toby Emmerich, chairman of Warner Brothers Pictures Group, called Snyder with an offer. Let's try again. A lot of people at the company, myself included, always felt badly that Zack didn't get to finish his vision of this film because of the circumstances, says Emmerich. This is vital because a lot of people hate Toby Emmerich, right, and want him to leave his position. Let's read what he said again. Toby Emmerich, chairman of Warner Brothers Pictures Group, called Snyder with an offer. Let's try again. A lot of the people at the company, myself included, always felt badly that Zack didn't get to finish his vision of this film because of the circumstances, says Emmerich. And so if there was a way to make it logistically and financially possible, which HBO Max did, and Zack had a willingness to do it, it seemed like a win for everybody. So Toby Emmerich being very humble and saying he felt bad that Zack didn't get to finish his picture. Interesting. So we've had John Berg being very humble towards Zack and respectful, Diane Nelson, and now Toby Emmerich. So the only one who hasn't come out and refuses to comment is Geoff Johns. So it was initially when people were saying this about Johns, I'm a big Geoff Johns fan. I'm a fan of his work. I was in denial and I was biting back. But now, even as a fan of Geoff Johns, we can see who the true aggressor really is. And it's great to hear from Toby and John Berg and Diane Nelson. So I think we can kind of respect them a bit more now, can't we? Initially, says Snyder, Warner Brothers just wanted to release the raw footage on his laptop. I was like, that's a no. That's a hard no, he says. And they're like, but why? You can just put up the rough cut. Snyder didn't trust their motivations. I go, here's why. 3 reasons. 1, you get the internet off your back, which is probably your main reason for wanting to do this. 2, you get to feel vindicated for making things right, I guess on some level. And then 3, you get a shitty version of the movie you can point at and go, see, it's not that good anyway. So maybe I was right. I was like, no chance. I would rather just have the Snyder Cut be a mythical unicorn for all time. Very interesting. So they wanted him to release an unfinished movie, and Zack's so intelligent. He knows what they're up to here. It's brilliant. Snyder estimates that it would cost around $70 million to undo Whedon's redo. For that, HBO Max gets 4 hours of hotly anticipated programming and the Hollywood comeback story of a lifetime. Snyder himself gets nothing. I'm not getting paid, he says. He was paid the first time. Of course, this time he wants creative control, and foregoing a fee helped. I didn't want to be beholden to anyone, and it allowed me to keep my negotiating powers with these people pretty strong. Fisher, for one, was eager to return. There's not a day that's gone by over the last 3 years I haven't thought about this movie, that I have not sat up at night thinking, what if there was a world wherein this thing actually does get released, says the actor sitting on the set in his grayscale motion capture suit. I probably should have let it go, but there was so much that we left behind in this version of the film. It's a completely different movie. As for the fan base, the Snyder movement has contributed to $500,000 to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention through donation sales of merchandise and auctions of props. People have been saying, oh, they attack people, says Deborah Snyder, her eyes tearing. But this fan base has saved lives as much as they wanted something for themselves. They came together for this amazing cause. You feel so helpless trying to help someone and you don't know what to do. It's literally life or death. And I felt like we didn't really know where to turn. So that's how Deb and Zack feel about us. Like we held their hands and we wanted to donate to a fight because of the death of their daughter that they were so passionate about. And so there are defenders as well. But now they're back in the business. It's hard to defend the indefensible. It's up to you as fans to stop threatening people and stop being abusive and have the intellect and the IQ to be able to have discourse with people constructively. Please take my advice. I can lose it sometimes. I have to hold back. Sometimes even deleting what I've written. It's difficult on the internet, but we must be better than them. Rebuilding the story he had always envisioned is what invigorates Snyder most. He can go as deep and dark as he likes. He can say to hell with DC's official timeline for the characters and let this alt version of the Justice League story wind up wherever he pleases. He has put Superman in a sleek black suit instead of the iconic blue and red. He's added the Joker, Jared Leto. He has reshot the ending with a hero cameo that will blow hardcore fans' minds in what may be a divisive move. Well, this is something Grace Randolph was talking about, a new ending. He has reshot the ending with a hero cameo that will blow hardcore fans' minds in what may be a divisive move. He's also presenting the movie in a boxy 4.3 format rather than widescreen, so that one day it can be watched on IMAX screens. Some may be irritated by seeing Justice League on HBO Max with black bars on either side. Snyder isn't troubled by that. So, just to confirm, there's a new superheroic ending. Iconic. I don't know what it means. I don't know what that means. But it's going to blow some people's minds and it's going to be controversial. This is interesting. What's going to happen here? And what does this mean for the future? The director also layering in some deeply personal elements. The movie closes with Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. Wow. It closes with that song. I love that version of the song. Wow. Performed by Alison Crowe, a friend who also sang it at Autumn's funeral. Wow. Well done, Zach. Well done. That's absolutely fitting. And I will not be switching off until that finishes. I always like to watch the credits, but knowing this is for Autumn, I didn't know Autumn. But you know what? Kids need us. They need us to be strong for them. They need us to be better than we are in our adult life for them. They rely on us. Zach did all he could. Deb did all she could. But ultimately wasn't enough. And I always feel an infinity for children, to protect them, to be there for them. And when you can't be there for them, it's very hard. It was Autumn's favourite song. Now it's elegy. It's an elegy to her. Justice League, however anyone else feels about it, is made of the things and people Snyder loves too. When you think about the catharsis of it, if I was a potter, I would have made some pottery to look for some way through this, he says. But I'm a filmmaker, so you get this giant movie. He wants people to love it. If some don't, he's all right with that. And with all of it, whatever comes, he's okay. What is my worth? What am I supposed to do? What am I about? Zack Snyder is answering Autumn's questions for himself. Wow. I'm blown away. I'm blown away. I didn't expect this. I did not expect this. That is the man bleeding out from the heart, telling us. That is the Zack Snyder story. Now, I resented some of the stuff the author of that article said about us, but pay no attention to that. Trying to bring balance, trying to bring other people's perspective. Listen, I understand why journalists don't like us. They were saying horrible things about Zack. They were saying the studio says there's no Snyder Cut. Now, to be fair to journalists, they went and asked the studio, and the studio told them, and they reported that. But still some verified journalists out there being so toxic about Zack. But I plead with you, stop giving them what they want. Stop being as toxic as they are. Laugh at them and move on. We've got our film, and we will bring back, restore the Snyderverse. But that, my friends, was something very important to bring to you. It is genuinely emotional. You know what? When I get emotionally involved with something, a film, a TV show, I'm in it. I'm rewatching Alias. That was an emotional show for me. I'm going to rewatch Lost. That was an emotional show. Storytelling means a great deal, but people and their feelings mean a great deal for me. This channel isn't about money to me. I'm not making money from this channel. I can barely get 100 views. I can't start lashing out money on equipment and advertising, but I'm here for 50 to 100 people a day. And I hope I do something for you. What I've done today is tell you a man's story. This is the most unique, emotional story in the history of Hollywood and the entertainment industry. It's about love, compassion, heartbreak, hatred, and a misunderstanding of each other. The Joker movie was full of so much toxicity from journalists and political analysts. It was insane. This is what the movie industry is now. There's too many agendas. And with Zack Snyder, those agendas became very toxic. The journalists, the medias, the fans that hate him, the fans that love him. I see more than a filmmaker here. I see a genuine, and I could be wrong, but a genuine DC human being, because the people who know him never come out and say anything negative about him. There's not one person. Everybody loves him who experiences him. That makes me want to fight for this man and for his DC vision. And we may not see the rest of this for many years to come. Prepare yourselves. He's going to be very busy with the Army of the Dead franchise. I plan to see the trailer on Thursday. We'll speak about it on this channel. Zack is back, but it hasn't been easy. The heartbreak, mourning his daughter. The quote from his daughter, "What am I worth? What am I worth?" It's amazing. It's amazing. It's so emotional. Reading now, as you could see, broke my heart. Because people who work in the industry, I know it's hard to see sometimes, but are human beings as well. This man has put his true self out there in this. We knew his story already, but not like this. You saw an interview there, wholeheartedly, from Deb Snyder, Zack Snyder. We saw Toby Emmerich, John Berg and Diane Nelson being very, very humble about Zack. For me, that I will never speak an ill word about Toby Emmerich or John Berg again, because they came out in this brand new article and spoke honestly, and spoke respectfully about Zack, while Jeff Johns refused to speak. That says everything. We know who the players are now. But Jeff Johns doesn't have any power anymore. It's all about the studio. It's all about John Stankey at AT&T and Sarnoff and Jason Keeler. And if this film does well, we can restore the Snyderverse. I want your comments down below. It was a very emotionally draining story to read. We knew, from the outside looking in, we knew they lost their daughter, but we didn't know everything. It was very interesting to know, for example, that Joss Whedon, Zack was still there when Joss Whedon first came in. Zack being magnanimous and saying, well, maybe he can bring a decent perspective. Maybe he can add some humour to it. But Zack, when he was pushed to release his movie as an unfinished movie, said, fuck you. He said, no, you're stitching me up here. And he knew it. All they wanted was the fans and their reputation intact at the studio. And he said, no, it's not going to happen. But it's amazing to think. At one moment, the studio said, release the rough cut. Then he said, fuck you, and they gave him 70 million. That's interesting. So they definitely quickly saw the financial capacity of this movie. I assume Zack proved it to them. But Zack's a very smart cookie. He's very intelligent, and he's very thorough tactically. What's also interesting is the moment that Christopher Nolan and Deborah Snyder saw Justice League and said to Zack, you must never see this movie for your own peace of mind. It will break your heart. Because they know how much Zack cares about art. I will support this man in a constructive way. I will not be toxic. If I have ever been toxic, I won't be toxic anymore. I think we should all learn from this. What happened to Autumn? What happened to Zack? It's a horrible thing that we never want to see any filmmaker go through again. And I hope in the future, my friends, that this won't happen to anyone again because of Zack Snyder and what Zack and Deb went through, but especially what they went through with the loss of their daughter, Autumn, who just wanted to know what she was worth. But isn't that the question we're all asking? I'm asking it myself all the time. What am I worth? You ask it, what are you worth? You want to be worth something to someone. You want to go on social media and you want to be loved. You want people to follow you and love you. That's the negative and positive elements of social media. We all want what Autumn wanted, but it was too much for her. I didn't know her, as I said, but I will save a special place in my heart for her forever and think about her and children like her and people suffering with depression. I suffer with these things myself. It's difficult. It really is. But I see these things, social media, as something that inspires me. Interacting with all of you from the Snyderverse DC fandom and other fandoms and other people on there. It's really important. What they went through is outstanding. But to see a personal, article like this is very rare. It's honest from Zach and Deb and the other people who spoke in the article. It's amazing. So I congratulate Zach and Deb and everyone who came forward to do this. But most important of all, I congratulate the author of this article. This is huge. This is massive. And now we can see the truth of the situation. But forget about the past. Forget about the past and look to the future. Support Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut on March the 18th and beyond. And we can restore the Snyderverse. Comment down below. Like, share and subscribe. And I'll be back tomorrow with more videos. Wow. That was sensational. I hope you enjoyed the video and listening to me reading that as much as I did reading that. It was very emotional. It was difficult. But I tell you what, I'm glad I did it. See you again soon.